They stole the ticket, took the seat, posted the selfies. But what they didn't see coming was the receipt waiting for them when they got home. This is the trip was mine, but so was the revenge. And the return flight, one way to regret.
He laughed while he boarded first class. I laughed when I deleted his name from everything. He was laughing when he boarded the plane. That smug, half-smile he wore when he wanted to remind the world how far he'd come. How far above it all he was. Champagne in one hand. Designer shades. Boarding pass in the other. Group 1. First class. Of course. His friend filmed him for Instagram. Let's go, boys. First class only, if you know, you know. They toasted. Tagging locations. Slapping on hashtags like #earned it and #noWivesAllowed. I watched it from the kitchen. Alone. Same kitchen I renovated. Same house I decorated. Same mortgage I contributed to, even when he said I didn't really need to worry about the finances. The night before he left, I'd asked very calmly if I was invited. He'd chuckled. Not laughed. Chuckled. Like the idea was adorable. Babe, this trip is for successful people. You wouldn't enjoy it. It's networking luxury. A different vibe. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I suddenly realized how long I'd been choking them down. He kissed the top of my head, called me sweetheart, and said he'd bring me something back from duty-free. And now there he was, boarding the flight like a king. Toasting with his friends while I stood barefoot on tile I picked out, next to a plant I kept alive, in a home that felt less like mine with every passing day. He left that morning without saying goodbye properly. Just a shouted, "Don't wait up," as he wheeled his monogrammed luggage out the door. I didn't wait up, but I did watch. I watched every update, every filtered photo, every sun-soaked cocktail, every girl in the background, every tag, every smile that didn't include me. And I didn't cry. Not then. I just turned my phone off, set it on the counter, and opened a blank document on my laptop. The subject line was simple. Exit strategy. Because the moment he boarded that plane, something clicked. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. He wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He wasn't making a mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing, and exactly what he thought I was worth. He thought I was the woman who would stay, who would smile through another boy's trip, who would keep the bed warm, the bills paid, and the silence soft while he chased the life he thought he deserved, without me in it. And for years I had been. Until that morning. Because while he was laughing his way into first class, I was quietly deleting his name from everything. I met Devin when we were both still pretending to be underdogs. He was ambitious in a loud way, all fast talk and 5-year plans scribbled on napkins. I was steady in a quiet way, detail-oriented, loyal, willing to stay up late researching certifications just so I could be useful to his next big pitch. He told me I was the kind of woman he'd always hoped to find, grounded, graceful, not high maintenance like his exes. I didn't realize that was code for convenient. We started dating when I was 24. I was working as an office assistant, freelancing on the side. He was still in the early stages of launching his app. Lots of talk, little return. I paid for more dinners than I'd admit to anyone. But it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like building something. He used to say things like, "When we make it big, it'll all be worth it. You've been with me since the beginning. I won't forget that." And I believed him. Because I wasn't in it for the payoff. I just wanted to be part of the vision. When he got his first investor, we celebrated with champagne in our tiny kitchen. He lifted the glass and said, "To the woman who made this possible." I carried that toast like a badge of honor. He moved fast after that. New apartment. New wardrobe. New team. I stayed in the same role, quietly cheering him on. Eventually we moved in together. He didn't ask me to quit my job. He just made it clear that my schedule needed to revolve around his. Meetings at odd hours. Events I needed to be on for, polished, pretty, but never too visible. I became his shadow. He said things like, "It's not that I don't want you around. I just need you to support me behind the scenes. That's where the real power is." And I nodded, because I loved him. And I believed that someday when he finally arrived, he'd turn around and reach for my hand, in public. But instead, he just kept walking. The vacations started when the second round of funding hit. At first, they were small, weekends in Miami, guys' trips to Vegas. I was invited, but never really meant to come. "It's just going to be networking and bottle service, babe. You'd hate it. Trust me." So I stayed, held down the house, managed the bills, answered his assistant's texts when he forgot appointments. And every time he came home, He brought me a souvenir, like a child handing over a toy with guilt hidden beneath the plastic. I told myself it meant something. That one day I'd get to go. One day we'd be equal. But one day never came. And now, looking back, I see it so clearly. He never intended to take me with him. He just needed someone to keep the lights on while he chased the version of success that didn't include the woman who got him there. It started as teasing. Little jabs he wrapped in laughter. You're lucky you're cute. You'd never survive in one of my meetings. You'd hate my industry. Way too competitive. You're not a big vision thinker, babe. That's not a bad thing. It's just not who you are. At first, I laughed with him. Because that's what you do when someone you love says something that feels like a paper cut. It stings, but it's small enough to hide. But the jokes didn't stop. They sharpened. He started talking over me when we were with his team, correcting me in front of friends, dismissing my ideas before I finished the sentence. That's not how it works in the real world. She means well, but she's not in tech. It's not her fault, she's more of a feelings person. I was building a freelance consulting portfolio at the time. Small clients. Meaningful work. Nothing flashy. I told him I was thinking about scaling it into a formal business. He laughed. Laughed. You? Running a company? Babe, do you know how intense that gets? You get overwhelmed just filing your taxes. I remember standing there, documents in hand, pride still warm from a new client email, and feeling it drain out of me like someone had punctured my chest. I didn't say anything, just nodded and said, yeah, maybe you're right. Because somewhere along the way, I'd started believing that his confidence was fact. That my dreams were fragile things not meant for sharp corners. He liked that I didn't compete with him. He liked that I didn't make too much noise. He liked that I stayed in the background while he talked about scaling mindshare and owning the room. He said he wanted a queen, but only if she bowed when he walked in. And I did. For too long. I made myself smaller, softer, simpler. When I got good news, I checked his mood before I shared it. When I got bad news, I buffered it with humor, so he wouldn't feel burdened. He didn't ask me to do these things outright, but I learned the rules quickly. Don't take up space. Don't shine too brightly. And whatever you do, don't outgrow the pedestal he built for you. Because it's not a pedestal. It's a leash. And eventually I realized I wasn't being loved. I was being contained. The scariest part wasn't the loneliness. It was how normal it started to feel. At first, it was little things. He'd sigh when I made plans with friends. Ask who was going. Then say, didn't we agree to save money this month? Or he'd mention how clingy one of my girlfriends was. It's weird how much she needs to vent to you. Don't you feel drained after that? And I'd nod, even if I didn't. Because he always made it sound so rational. Gradually, I started declining invitations. Girls' brunches. Book clubs. Casual birthdays. He never said I couldn't go. He just made it inconvenient to say yes. By year 3, I could count my close friends on one hand. By year 4, I couldn't count them at all. My world revolved around him, his schedule, his stress, his needs. When I talked about needing space or missing certain parts of my life, he'd get defensive. I just don't want you wasting time with people who don't challenge you. I'm trying to build something huge here. Can you not derail me with this emotional stuff? Why are you always looking for problems? Eventually, I stopped bringing it up. I thought that made me strong. I thought keeping the peace meant protecting the relationship. But really, I was protecting his comfort at the cost of my own clarity. My hobbies disappeared first. Then my voice. Then my joy. The only thing that remained was the version of me that he preferred. Supportive, convenient, low maintenance. When I mentioned wanting to go back to school, he said, "You're already great at what you do. Why waste time on more credentials?" When I suggested a weekend trip together, he replied, "That kind of thing is for people who aren't grinding 24/7. When I cried after a particularly lonely day, he said, "You need to learn how to manage your emotions better. I can't always carry that." So I stopped asking, stopped crying, stopped hoping he'd ever see the version of me that was hungry for more connection, more purpose, more life. And the truth is, I thought that was love. I thought sacrifice meant I was doing it right. But what I was really doing was disappearing. And no one noticed. Not even me. Until he boarded that plane. And I finally remembered what it felt like to be completely, devastatingly alone. And realize I hadn't lost him. I'd lost myself. By the time the trips became frequent, I had stopped asking questions. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I already knew them. At first, they were quick. Weekend getaways with the guys. Tech conferences that somehow didn't have public schedules. Startup summits in cities where he never brought back business cards. It's not your scene, babe. It's exhausting, you'd hate it. Trust me, you'd be so bored. I trusted him. Or I tried to. But slowly the trips got longer. More elaborate. I started recognizing the same names over and over. A group of men he called his inner circle. They'd tag each other on stories, laughing at private clubs and luxury rooftops while I folded laundry alone, listening to the hum of a house I used to feel at home in. One night, I asked if we could plan a vacation together. Just the two of us. Something easy. A weekend in Arizona. A lake cabin. Anything. He didn't even look up from his laptop. Honestly, I don't think now's the right time. Maybe when you've got more going on career-wise, we can do something worth documenting. I stared at him, trying to decide which part of that sentence hurt the most. The worth documenting? The subtle jab at my job? The way he said we when what he meant was you. I laughed softly, bitterly, and asked, "Do you even want to travel with me?" He looked annoyed, like I'd asked something offensive. "Why are you making this about you? Can't I have one thing that's just mine?" That was the moment it clicked. The trips weren't about business. They weren't about relaxation. They were about identity. His. He wanted to be the man who flew first class with people who looked the part, who made inside jokes on yachts, who toasted champagne with models and moguls, and whoever else validated the version of himself he wanted to become. And me. I didn't fit the image. Not because I wasn't enough, but because I wasn't curated. I was real. And real wasn't sexy on social media. He didn't want a partner. He wanted a prop. And every day, I was becoming less of what he wanted to be seen with, even though I was still everything he needed to survive. It was a Tuesday morning. We were sitting at the kitchen island, the same one I picked out when we remodeled. He was scrolling through flights on his phone while sipping coffee from the mug I bought him after his first funding round. I was making a grocery list. I asked, gently, if he'd like to plan a trip together. Something small. Just us. No Instagram. No hashtags. Just real air, real time, real connection. He didn't look up. He just snorted. "Babe, only successful people go on trips like this." I froze. "What?" He glanced at me, still smiling like it was a joke. "These resorts aren't for amateurs. You wouldn't get it." Then he went back to scrolling. Like he hadn't just punctured something soft inside me. Like he hadn't just confirmed what I'd quietly feared for years. I stood there holding a pen, watching him plan his next moment of curated luxury, and I realized. He didn't respect me. He didn't admire me. He didn't even see me. Not really. He saw the version of me he'd crafted in his mind. The supportive partner, the placeholder, the background music to his main character life. And in that moment, I felt something inside me go very, very quiet. Not dead. Not broken. Just focused. There was no argument. No dramatic walkout. No tears. I simply turned the page on the grocery list, wrote down printer ink, and added one more line beneath it. Exit strategy. Because that sentence, "Only successful people go on trips like this," wasn't just rude. It was truth. His truth was that I wasn't part of his future. That he saw me as the woman he'd bring back something for. Not the woman he'd bring along. And from that moment forward, I knew he would never be man enough to build something with me. So I'd build something without him. After that morning, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't ask him to take it back. Because there was nothing left to fight for. Not the relationship. Not the dream. Not the illusion of being chosen. He'd already made his choice. So I made mine. I went silent. Not with coldness. Not with drama. With precision. He thought I was pulling away. He thought I was moody. He told his friends I was going through something. I was going through the process of setting myself free. I started small. Screenshots. Account logins. Bank statements. Insurance paperwork he hadn't touched in months. I scanned and saved everything to a private drive. Made backups. Then backups of the backups. I signed up for a consultation with a lawyer and listed my return address as my friend Danny's apartment, just in case. I opened a new email address. A new bank account. I didn't even touch his money. I didn't want it. What I wanted was control over mine. Control over me. He left for another weekend trip, some luxury mastermind in Napa. The second the Uber pulled away from our driveway, I opened my laptop and made a list. Remove name from utilities. Transfer car title. Redirect mail. Find a storage unit. Lock in an exit date. I wasn't leaving in a flurry. I wasn't leaving in rage. I was leaving in stages. Every time he posted a selfie by a pool or with a glass of wine and the caption, "Hustle excuses," I crossed off another item on my list. And every time he called to check in, "Need anything while I'm gone? Want me to bring you back that perfume you like?" I smiled through the phone and said, "No, I'm good. Just get some rest." He didn't know he was talking to the version of me who was already halfway gone. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel weak for keeping quiet. I felt powerful. Because silence isn't always submission. Sometimes it's strategy. And mine was nearly complete. He left on a Thursday. Suitcase packed the night before, full of pressed shirts and overpriced sunglasses. He'd booked first class, of course. Said he deserved to fly in comfort after all the stress. I didn't argue. I offered to drive him to the airport. He declined. Said he'd rather Uber. Less emotional that way. As if I'd be crying at the gate. He kissed my cheek before he left. Didn't even look me in the eye. "I'll text when I land. Don't wait up." And then he was gone. I waited exactly 30 seconds after the door shut before opening my laptop. The storage unit reservation? Confirmed. Key already in my purse. The moving service? Booked under a fake name, a friend's LLC, so he wouldn't recognize the charge. They'd be there in 4 hours. The utilities? Already out of my name. The renter's insurance? Cancelled. I moved methodically. Every piece of clothing I wanted was folded, packed, and loaded into bins. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't scrambling. This was a plan. I left behind anything he bought me, shoes, bags, the espresso machine he gifted me the Christmas after his first big deal. Let him keep the symbols. I was reclaiming myself. I wiped the laptop I shared with him, logged out of every app, deleted myself from every autofill. By noon, the apartment was half empty. By 3 p.m. I was walking through the door of a one-bedroom sublet across town, small, quiet mine. I didn't cry once. The movers said I looked like someone heading to a spa weekend. I smiled. They weren't wrong. I ordered Thai food that night and watched my favorite movie under a blanket I hadn't used in years because he said it clashed with his aesthetic. It felt like a reunion. With myself. Meanwhile, he was in Tulum, posting photos of ocean views, neon cocktails, rooftop pools. Laughing in every frame. Tanned. Shirtless. Surrounded by friends who didn't know, or didn't care, what kind of man he really was. And then came the post that broke the last thread. A selfie on the flight back. Champagne in one hand. Smug grin on his face. Captioned. "First class only. If you know, you know." I read it once. Then I blocked him. Everywhere. Phone. Social. Email. Banking. Streaming. I deleted his name from everything. Because I wasn't just done loving him. I was done even remembering how. He landed on a Sunday evening. Texted me from the airport. "Babe, wheels down. Be home in an hour. You want anything?" I didn't reply. Mostly because I couldn't. He was blocked. But also because I had nothing left to say. I was sitting in my new apartment, feet curled beneath me, sipping a glass of wine with the kind of peace that doesn't ask for permission. He walked into silence. No welcome home. No dinner on the stove. No light left on. The living room was half empty. The closet? Bare. The fridge? Wiped clean except for a bottle of his favorite almond milk and a sticky note that said, "Good luck." Smiley face. He called twice. Then 3 more times. He texted Danny, my closest friend, and she responded with one sentence. "She's safe. Don't contact her." He didn't stop. The next morning, he called the bank. His access? Gone. He called our old landlord. They told him the lease was terminated. Paid out. Deposit already returned, to me. He called my job. They said I'd taken a leave of absence to start something new. He called my sister. She didn't pick up. He showed up at my old gym, then my nail salon, then the Thai place around the corner like I might just appear if he retraced his steps hard enough. But I wasn't there. Because I wasn't his anymore. He finally emailed me. Subject. Please. Let me explain. The body was long. He said I'd blindsided him. Said I should have talked to him. Said he didn't really mean it when he said those things. That he was just stressed, trying to fit in, saying what people around him were saying. That he was proud of me. That he missed me. That he wanted to fix this. I read the email twice. Then archived it. No reply. Because I wasn't interested in explanations from the man who looked me in the eye and said I wasn't worthy of his world. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't cruel. I was just done. And when I looked around my new space, small, sunlit, full of air, I realized I'd taken the most important things with me. My dignity. My clarity. My name, on everything that mattered now. And him? He'd been deleted. It showed up on my timeline because someone screenshotted it. A friend of a friend. Someone who didn't know I'd blocked him, didn't know I'd already left. The caption read, "Some people just can't handle success. That's okay, not everyone's built for the top." The photo. Devin. At a networking brunch. Wearing a blazer over a designer tee. Smiling like the man he always pretended to be. There were 3 men beside him, all familiar from those luxury trips, and one woman I didn't recognize. Long legs. High cheekbones. Tan. Wearing a white dress and laughing toward the camera like she owned the moment. He had his arm around her. Not in a romantic way. Not quite, but with familiarity. The kind of familiarity that makes you realize someone's already been replaced, even before they leave. I stared at it for a moment. I wasn't jealous. I wasn't even hurt. But I felt something inside me harden. Because that caption? "Some people just can't handle success," wasn't about business. It wasn't about him. It was about me. It was him rewriting the narrative, turning his arrogance into ambition, his dismissal into standards. I was no longer the woman who supported him through early mornings and late bills. I was now the one who couldn't keep up. The woman he left behind. The woman he made it look like he outgrew. Except he didn't leave me. I left him. And I didn't leave because I couldn't handle his lifestyle. I left because I finally realized that I didn't belong in a world where being kind made me weak. Where being steady made me forgettable. Where being loving made me disposable. He didn't build that world without me. He built it on me. On my silence. My flexibility. My willingness to carry the invisible weight of being his emotional, financial, and spiritual backup system. So I didn't screenshot the post. Didn't respond. Didn't reach out to correct the story. Because the truth was already living with me. In every inch of my new apartment. In every sunrise I watched without needing permission. In every laugh I shared with people who saw me, not just as support, but as center. Devin could spin the narrative however he wanted. Because at the end of the day, the only people who believed him were the ones who didn't know me. I didn't rush it. I waited 3 full days after that final post. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted to be clear. Clear that it wasn't about proving anything. It was about closing the door all the way. I opened my laptop on a Thursday morning, made tea, turned on music, and started deleting. The photo album's gone. The shared drive unlinked. The old anniversary playlists erased. I unsubscribed him from anything with my name on it. Removed him from emergency contacts. Cleared the last traces of him from my phone. Deleted the passcode he once used for my iPad. Tossed out the backup charger he left in the drawer. Donated the hoodie I used to wear when I missed him. It didn't hurt. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like a reset. Like taking a deep breath after holding it in for 5 years. I checked the last box on my list, an old email folder titled Shared Life. Inside were receipts. Travel plans. Notes from the early days. One of them was a draft I never sent, a love letter I wrote him when he first got funded. I almost read it. Almost. But then I paused. And deleted the whole folder instead. Because love doesn't live in archives. And I wasn't building a shrine to a man who made me feel like an afterthought. I closed my laptop. Took one final look around my apartment. Sunlight on the hardwood floors. Books I picked out myself. Flowers in a vase. My name on the lease. My life on display, as is. Not curated. Not filtered. Not waiting to be approved. Just real. Mine. Later that night, I went out with friends. We ordered wine and laughed until we were crying. I danced a little. Smiled a lot. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't check my phone once. Because there was nothing on it I missed. Nothing I needed. Nothing waiting to pull me back into the version of me I'd finally outgrown. Devin was still out there, probably spinning a story. But I wasn't listening. I was done being a chapter in his narrative. Because I had already started writing my own. And he was no longer in the cast. He showed up at my job. No call. No warning. Just walked in like the months hadn't passed. Like silence didn't mean final. Like his story still had space for a plot twist that involved me coming back. I was in the middle of helping a client when I saw him through the glass. Hands in his pockets. Wearing that same, "I made a mistake," expression he used the last time he forgot my birthday. This time, it didn't move me. When I stepped out, he smiled, cautious, unsure. "Hey," he said. "You look great." "Hi, Devin." He rocked on his heels. "I know I'm not supposed to be here. But I didn't know how else to see you." I didn't say anything. He tried again. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. The trips. The way I treated you. I thought I was chasing success, but really, I was just running from feeling small. His voice cracked on the word small. I see you now, he added. I see what you were trying to build with me. What you gave. What I threw away. I nodded once. I know, I said. I always saw it. I just got tired of being the only one who did. He stepped closer. Can we talk? We're talking. I mean, outside of here. Dinner. Coffee. Just to talk. I tilted my head. Devin, I spent years trying to make you proud to stand next to me. I twisted myself into something smaller, quieter, easier, and you still boarded that plane without me. His mouth opened, but I held up a hand. You made it clear. I wasn't part of your world. And I believed you. He swallowed hard. But I miss you. I smiled. Not bitter. Not sad. Just done. I missed me too. But I found her again. And she's not interested in going back. He stood there. Still hoping. Still not understanding that what he lost wasn't just a girlfriend. It was access. To peace. To partnership. To the kind of woman who loved deeply, stayed long, and still walked away with grace. A woman who now knew that silence doesn't mean indecision. It means strategy. I stepped back. I wish you healing, Devin. I really do. Then I turned around and walked away. Back into my life. Back into myself. When silence didn't work in his favor, he tried the next best thing. Spin. It started with a few subtle posts. Quotes about betrayal. Captions about loyalty. A moody selfie with the words, "Some people only love you when it's easy." I ignored it. Then came the mutual friend check-ins. Hey, just wanted to say I'm here if you need anything. I know things got messy. Devin said you kind of shut him out. He seems confused. Confused? No. He was just shocked that I didn't beg. Didn't explain. Didn't give him a public meltdown to weaponize. So he started telling his version. That I blindsided him. That I was always emotional. That I gave up when things got hard. He told one of his friends, loudly at a dinner I wasn't invited to, that I couldn't handle the pressure of being with someone driven. That I was jealous of his success. It got back to me. Everything always does. And for a second I felt that old twinge. The urge to clarify. Defend. Step in and say, actually. But then I remembered. You don't defend yourself against fiction. You just keep living in truth. And the truth? The people who knew me, who saw the quiet years, the subtle dimming, the careful silence, they didn't ask questions. They reached out with love. With phrases like, "We always wondered how you stayed so patient. And you look lighter now. Happier." Even Danny, who had never liked him, sent a one-word text after she saw one of his posts. Pathetic. He tried one last reach. A long, dramatic Instagram story about being discarded by people who pretend to be gentle. I muted him. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to hear. I didn't need to watch him rewrite the ending, because I had lived the whole book. And while he was out there begging for the benefit of the doubt, I was busy building a life that didn't need defense, because I'd already won. And I didn't win by getting even. I won by getting out. There was a day, not long after he tried to rewrite our ending, when I stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize myself. Not in the way I didn't recognize myself with him, dull, edited, muted. This time, I didn't recognize the strength in my own posture, the ease in my own skin. The way my silence wasn't heavy anymore, it was earned. I used to be the woman who measured success in survival, who stayed in rooms that dimmed her light just because she didn't want to be called too much, who flinched when someone asked about her dreams because she'd forgotten them, buried somewhere under the pile of his. But now I was the woman who woke up without anxiety, who played her music loud, who scheduled her own days, who stood in line for coffee with nothing but time and her favorite lipstick. I had taken myself back, one quiet decision at a time. It didn't happen all at once. Healing never does. There were mornings when I missed him out of habit, when I remembered a joke, a dinner, a moment that once felt safe. But I never missed the woman I was with him, the one who waited for permission, who asked to be seen, who hoped love would arrive if she just stayed still enough. She was gone, and in her place was someone I was proud of, not because she escaped, but because she grew, into her own voice, her own pace, her own damn name. Sometimes I think about who I'll be a year from now, and I smile, because for the first time in a long time, that future doesn't include begging anyone to choose me. I already did. It wasn't loud. There was no viral moment, no flashy announcement, just an email with a subject line I almost missed. Feature confirmation, women in tech spotlight. I opened it slowly, thinking it was spam. But there it was. An invitation to be interviewed. For the consulting firm I started. The one I built quietly, while he was off chasing yachts and hashtags. They wanted to feature my story. Not the one about him. The one about me. About growth. Strategy. Independence. The things I used to apologize for wanting. Now, they were my brand. The article dropped 2 weeks later. A clean 3-page spread with a professional photo and a headline that read, "From supportive partner to CEO. The woman who rebuilt her life her way." I didn't even cry. I just sat with it. Let it land. People started reaching out. Former colleagues. Friends I hadn't seen in years. Even a couple of women I didn't know, just followers, strangers, who said they saw themselves in my story. One wrote, "Thank you for showing me it's not too late." I screenshotted that one. Not to share. Just to keep. For the days I needed a reminder that this wasn't just about escape. It was about becoming. Jonah, someone I met at a local pitch event, saw the article too. He texted, "You're incredible. Always were. Glad the world's finally catching up." I smiled. Not because it meant anything romantic, but because I finally had people around me who didn't need to be convinced of my value. They just saw it. Because I did. I didn't post about the article. Didn't tag anyone. But word got around. And one night, while I was scrolling through my email, I saw it. Devon. Subject line. I read the article. The message was short. "You always had it in you. I just couldn't see it back then. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to. The story spoke for itself. So did the silence. And while he was out there realizing what he lost, I was out here living everything he said I wasn't ready for. Not out of spite. Out of alignment. Out of truth. Out of finally knowing that you don't have to burn bridges to move forward. You just have to build a life that makes looking back unnecessary. It came through while I was brushing my teeth. An email. No subject line. I didn't need to click to know who it was from. I stood there, staring at my phone, toothbrush still in hand, and felt nothing. Not curiosity. Not nostalgia. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that follows a storm you outlived. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Because I already knew what it would say. A final plea. A wistful memory. One more I wish I'd known then. But I had no interest in being part of someone's regret redemption arc. Not when I'd already written my own story. I put the phone down. Finished brushing. Put on my face serum. Sat on the couch and opened a journal I hadn't touched in months. Inside was a note I'd scribbled during the hardest week of my exit. "Someday this will all make sense. Stay steady. The world is coming back to you." It had. In pieces. In strangers turned community. In silence turned sanctuary. In one small, full moment at a time. That morning, I walked to my favorite cafe. The barista knew my name. My order was perfect. The playlist was vibey and warm. I sat in the corner seat by the window, opened my laptop, and kept writing. Not emails to ghosts. Not love letters to the past. But proposals. Ideas. Future things. Because I was no longer looking back. The man who once told me I wasn't built for first class? He was still chasing validation. Still trying to build a brand on borrowed confidence. Still sending emails into the void. But me? I was thriving in the quiet. In the joy. In the after. And I didn't need to reply. Because I had already answered everything I needed to with my absence. And the life I built without him? Spoke louder than any goodbye. They went on the Italy trip I booked, after one of them hit me with their car. It happened on a Wednesday. Not that it matters, the day of the week. But for some reason I remember it. I remember everything. The way the air smelled like rain even though the sky was clear. The way my phone buzzed with a confirmation email. Final payment received. Italy awaits. And then the moment everything stopped. I was crossing 16th and Marlow. Walking. In the crosswalk. The walk sign blinking green. And then, nothing. Just sound. Metal. Screeching. The slam of something against something else. And then my body folding like a question mark in midair. When I woke up, the lights were too bright. The pain hit all at once, white hot, like someone had poured electricity into my bones. Then the beeping. Machines. Voices. A nurse. "You're okay. You're safe. You're in recovery." But I wasn't safe. Not even close. Because the first thing I asked, the first thing my throat managed to rasp out between cracked lips and swelling. "Where's my family?" She hesitated. Not long. Just enough for me to know something was wrong. "They all left. They're not here." "Not here? My parents? My brother?" "I'd been hit by a car." I was lying in a hospital bed with a broken leg, a bruised rib, a mild concussion, and stitches across my temple, and they were not here. The nurse checked her chart. They signed off at discharge from ER. Said you'd be stable overnight. That was yesterday. Yesterday. I'd been unconscious for nearly 24 hours. And my family had already come and gone. I asked for my phone. When I opened it, the first notification that popped up wasn't from them. It was from Instagram. My brother had tagged me in a story. Aeroplano ciao, Roma. I opened it with shaking hands. There they were. My parents. My brother. Smiling at the airport, holding up passports, matching luggage behind them. I zoomed in. One of the suitcases was mine. The one I bought for this trip. The one I used my bonus to pay for. The one I ordered in everyone's favorite color because I thought this vacation would fix things. A minute later, a voicemail came through. My mom's voice. Hi, sweetheart. I know this isn't ideal, but we couldn't cancel the trip last minute. Everything was non-refundable. We figured you wouldn't want us to miss out. And we need the break, too. Don't call unless it's an emergency. Focus on healing. We'll check in once we're back. I stared at the screen, not even blinking. I had been hit by a car. And they were boarding a plane to Italy. The trip I booked. I paid for. I planned. As a way to bring us closer after years of walking on eggshells. And they left me in a hospital bed. Without a second thought. I didn't cry. Not then. I just turned the volume down. Closed my eyes. And tried to remember if I'd ever really belonged to them. Or if I'd only been holding the camera. Italy was supposed to be a reset. A clean slate. A rare gesture of optimism on my part. Because I knew things were strained with my family, but I still believed they could get better. Or maybe I just hoped they'd notice me. We hadn't taken a family vacation in almost a decade. Not since I was in high school. After that, everything became about Brian. My younger brother. The golden boy. The gifted one. The one who could do no wrong, even when he did plenty. I was the reliable one. The emotional shock absorber. The planner. The helper. The kid who never needed too much. Until I did. And by then, it was already clear that I was the inconvenient child. I still remember the moment the idea for the trip came to me. We were sitting around the table at Thanksgiving, and no one was talking. Not really. Brian was scrolling his phone. My mom was criticizing the stuffing I'd brought. My dad kept glancing at the clock like he had somewhere better to be. I wanted to break the cycle. So I blurted it out. What if we took a trip this spring? Like, an actual family vacation. Something special. Brian snorted. My mom raised an eyebrow. My dad said, well, it'd have to be cheap. And somehow, instead of dying in the silence, the idea grew. I pitched it again 2 weeks later. Italy. My dream destination. Their dream food. Brian loved pasta. My mom always said she wanted to see Venice. I created a shared folder. Made a budget spreadsheet. Scoured travel deals. Booked refundable flights with my own credit card while I waited for their yes. And they gave it, eventually. Mostly because I was doing all the work. I created custom itinerary packets. Booked group tours. Made dinner reservations based on everyone's preferences. I even paid extra for nicer hotels because I didn't want to hear my mom complain about the beds. When the final confirmations came through, I sent them a message that read, I can't wait to make these memories with you. No one replied. Just a thumbs up from Brian 3 days later. But I didn't let it ruin it. Because I believed, with everything in me, that if we could just get there, if we could just sit on a patio together in Rome, drinking wine, watching the sunset, maybe they'd see me again, or for the first time. And I didn't care how much it cost. Not in dollars. Not in dignity. I just wanted to belong. And now, they were halfway across the world, holding the itinerary I designed, using the seat assignments I picked, eating pasta in my dream city, while I recovered alone, from a crash they hadn't even paused to mourn. The thing is, the trip didn't create the distance. It just revealed it. It had always been there, this invisible wall between me and them. A quiet, unspoken truth that I wasn't one of them in the way Brian was. He was the center, the loud one, the funny one, the effortlessly magnetic one. When he spoke, people listened. When I spoke, they waited for me to finish. Growing up, I used to tell myself it was just a phase. That families go through seasons. That once we were older, things would even out. But they never did. Even as adults, the dynamic never shifted. At Christmas, my mom always asked Brian about his job, his apartment, his girlfriend. She asked me if I was still doing that little contract thing. My dad would offer to help Brian with rent, car repairs, vacations. I once asked for help covering a dental bill, and he redirected the conversation to my spending habits. If Brian made a mistake, it was just a bad day. If I slipped up, it was a character flaw. But I kept showing up. For birthdays. For holidays. For awkward phone calls and family group texts that were 90% silence and 10% passive aggression. Because that's what you do, right? You love your family, even when it hurts. Even when they don't clap when you win, or call when you're low, or bother to say thank you when you pour your whole self into giving them something special. Like a trip. To Italy. Still, in the weeks leading up to the vacation, I convinced myself this would be the moment it shifted. My mom sent a packing list. My dad asked if we needed travel adapters. Brian even texted me a TikTok of a pizza place he wanted to try. It was more engagement than I'd gotten in years. And it gave me hope. But then came the little cracks. My mom asked if we could swap one of the hotels, the one I'd picked for its views, because Brian didn't think it looked cool enough. My dad asked if I could drive them to the airport, even though we were all on the same flight. Brian complained about the early departure time I chose, even though it saved us $300. No one said thank you. No one asked how I was feeling. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't cruelty. It was erasure. The kind that doesn't scream, it sighs. Shrugs. Looks past you. And I would have swallowed all of it. If they'd just stayed. If they'd chosen me, when it really counted. But they didn't. Because deep down, I think they never saw me as someone worth choosing. I was just the organizer. The budgeter. The planner. The emotional assistant in a family that always needed a little too much and gave a little too little. And when the moment came to prove otherwise, they packed their bags. And left. It was supposed to be our last night together before the trip. We had dinner at my place, pasta and wine, something simple. I told them I wanted to keep it low-key since our flight was early. But no one stayed long. My mom arrived with a to-go cup of coffee and a face that said she didn't want to be there. My dad kept checking his watch, like someone had somewhere more important to be. Brian showed up 30 minutes late and barely made eye contact. Still, I lit candles. Played a quiet playlist. Tried. We ate mostly in silence, interrupted only by Brian tapping through TikToks between bites and my dad asking what terminal we were flying out of. Even though I'd sent them the itinerary 3 times. I tried to bring up the Colosseum tour I booked. Said I'd found a less touristy pizza place near Trastevere. No one responded. My mom said, "Just make sure I have the hotel Wi-Fi when we land." My dad asked if I could bring extra granola bars for the flight. Brian asked if I'd remember to Venmo him for his share of the travel insurance, the one I paid up front and he never reimbursed me for. I laughed, just to keep from breaking. After dinner, they all stood at the door like guests who had overstayed. I asked if we could take a quick group photo. My mom said her makeup was off. Brian said the lighting was bad. My dad didn't say anything at all. They left in under 2 hours. No hugs. No warmth. No, thank you for doing all this. Just quick goodbyes and a vague see you in the morning. I stood at the window after they left, watching them walk down the sidewalk, 3 shadows side by side. I wasn't one of them. Not really. I was the extra piece. The tag-along. The placeholder in a family that had already decided where they stood, and where I didn't. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that night, passport in hand, thinking, maybe it's just nerves. Maybe tomorrow will feel different. But it didn't. Because tomorrow never came. Not for me. At least, not the version I'd planned. I never made it to the airport. I never boarded the flight. And I didn't know it then, but that dinner wasn't just the last night before the trip. It was the last time I'd ever pretend we were a family. I woke up early that morning. Too early. I couldn't sleep. Partly nerves, partly hope. Partly that feeling you get when something inside you knows something outside of you is about to go very, very wrong. I made tea. Sat on the couch with my suitcase by the door. Double-checked everyone's boarding passes on my phone. 7:10 a.m. Flight. Terminal 2. Row 14. I texted the group chat. Morning. Let me know when you're leaving. Can't wait, smiley face. No response. At 5:45 a.m. I decided to take a short walk. My apartment was a 10-minute drive from theirs, and we'd agreed to meet at the curb and Uber together. But no one had confirmed, so I walked toward their street, just to see. It was quiet, early enough that the sky was still bruised with that soft blue light before sunrise. I remember passing the bakery, smelling warm bread through the alley vent. I remember hearing the engine before I saw the car. I stepped into the crosswalk, and then everything went white. Sound. Metal. Tires. A horn. A scream, I think mine. Pain everywhere and nowhere. And then silence. When I came to in the ER, the nurse told me I'd been unconscious for several hours. Said a driver called it in anonymously from a payphone. The car didn't stop. Didn't come back. Hit and run. I asked what they knew. Make. Model. Color. A light gray midsize SUV. Something flickered in my mind, a flash from that morning, just before the impact. A familiar bumper sticker. A dent on the left side. A parking tag in the corner of the windshield. I couldn't place it, but I felt it, like déjà vu with teeth. When I asked the nurse if anyone had come to see me, she flipped through the chart. Someone signed you in, a man. He didn't leave a name. Said you'd be okay overnight. I asked what he looked like. She said she didn't get a good look. He was wearing a baseball cap. Kept his head down. And then he left. I asked if he seemed upset. She said he looked guilty. But by the time I was conscious enough to ask more questions, he was gone. And so was my family. Boarding passes scanned. Plane wheels up. Brian posted a photo that afternoon. Italy, we're coming for you, Italy airplane, #Siblingson, #blessed. I stared at the screen. At the date. At the time. It was posted 12 minutes after my chart showed I was admitted. Which meant they knew. They had to know. And they went anyway. The first 2 days were a blur. Pain meds. Blood pressure cuffs. The soft shuffle of nurses and the constant beep of machines monitoring the body of someone no one seemed to be missing. No visitors. No messages. Just silence. I checked my phone again and again, convinced I'd missed something. A voicemail. A text. A comment hidden under a filter of reception and shock. Nothing. I asked the nurse if my family had called. She checked. No, sweetheart. Just the one sign-in. You haven't had anyone else check in since. I stared at the wall for a long time after that. Eventually, I pulled myself upright in bed, wincing, dizzy, and opened Instagram. They were already there. In Italy. Posing in front of the Spanish Steps. Eating cacio e pepe. Posting reels of gondolas with cheesy Eurobeats over the top. Brian tagged me in one. Wish you were here, broken heart. No call. No direct message. Just that caption, like I was someone who chose not to come. I finally opened the voicemail again. My mom's voice, crisp and detached. We figured you wouldn't want us to cancel the trip over a broken leg. We all need the break. Don't call unless it's urgent. I paused the message halfway through. Because that word, urgent, wrapped around my chest like a vice. I had been hit by a car. Alone. On the day of the trip I booked for them. And it still wasn't urgent enough to matter. I pulled out the itinerary folder I kept in my bag. The one I printed, laminated, color-coded. Page after page of carefully planned experiences I thought we'd share. And now, they were all in motion without me. I texted my mom. Simple. Did you know I was hit? No reply. Not that day. Not the next. When she finally responded, it wasn't an answer. It was deflection. We're doing our best to enjoy what's left of the trip. Please stop making us feel guilty. Guilty? I sat with that word for a long time. Because guilt implies accident. Guilt implies something done unintentionally. But they weren't guilty. They were comfortable. Comfortable enough to drink wine, smile for pictures, and sleep in villas while I recovered from injuries they hadn't even bothered to ask about. That was the moment something shifted. Not in my body, in my brain. I stopped waiting for the check-ins. Stopped hoping for the "how are you feeling?" or "we'll come home early." Because they weren't coming home early. And the way they left was just a louder version of what they'd always done quietly. It came through at 11:08 p.m. A voicemail. Same detached tone. Same guilt-flavored gaslighting. Hey honey, I know you're probably overwhelmed, but we're doing what we can from over here. The trip has been complicated. Emotionally. You know how your brother internalizes stress. Try not to worry us while we're abroad. Let's focus on healing. We'll talk once we're back. Okay. I replayed it twice. Not because I needed clarification, but because I couldn't believe it was real. They wanted me to stay quiet, to not inconvenience them, while I lay in a hospital bed recovering from an accident. An accident they hadn't seen, hadn't acknowledged, hadn't asked about. They went to Rome, with my itinerary, my reservations, my suitcase, and then they asked me not to interrupt their emotional experience with my recovery. It was almost funny. Almost. Because that voicemail made one thing perfectly clear. I was not the priority. Not now. Not ever. Not when I bought the tickets. Not when I called for them from a hospital bed. Not when I asked very softly if they even cared. They didn't say "we miss you." They didn't say "we're sorry." They didn't say we'll make this right. They said don't call. Because my pain made their vacation awkward. Because acknowledging what happened meant having to answer for it. So they tucked it away, like I was an inconvenient reminder of their own selfishness. And I finally stopped trying to understand them. Because there's no logic in betrayal. No blueprint for a family that says, we're hurting too, while sipping Prosecco on a rooftop you paid for. There's just distance. A choice made over and over again. And now, I was done being the one trying to close that gap. It started with the shoes. When the nurse brought me my belongings, what little I'd had on me, I noticed they were scuffed on the left side. Deep grooves. Scraped leather. A tear in the stitching that hadn't been there before. It lined up with the bruises. The way my leg had twisted when I landed. The way the bumper must have clipped me before I hit the pavement. But it wasn't just the damage. It was what wasn't there. No tire marks on the clothes. No paint residue. No glass fragments. It felt too clean. The nurse said the EMTs reported a low-impact collision at moderate speed. But I remember being thrown. I asked again for the police report. She said it hadn't come through yet. The incident was still under investigation, but the hit and run hadn't been formally logged due to lack of witness statements. Which didn't make sense. Because I'd been told there was a caller. Someone who used a payphone to report the crash. But now there was no record of the call. Only that I'd been dropped off. Signed in. By an unidentified male. And suddenly, the blank space in my memory started to feel like a doorway. A door someone had quietly closed. I asked about traffic cameras. The nurse looked uncomfortable. Said that sometimes those feeds get overwritten after 24 hours unless someone requests preservation. I asked if anyone had. She didn't answer. So I called the city non-emergency line. Asked the same question. Was met with the same silence. Eventually, I spoke to a tech in the ER, a younger nurse who had been there the night I came in. I asked if she remembered who brought me in. She hesitated, then said, I'm not supposed to share details, but I recognize the guy. I've seen him before. Pretty sure he was your brother. I froze. Are you sure? She shrugged. Didn't see his face, but the voice sounded like him. He kept his head down. Used the name Bennett on the sign-in form. That's your last name, right? My hands went cold. Bennett. It was my last name, but it wasn't mine that night. It was his. And just like that, every blurred frame came rushing back. The engine I recognized. The voice that mumbled to the nurse. The way Brian never posted a single story between 5:30 and 7 a.m. The morning of the trip. He'd said they left for the airport by 6. But my admission form said I was dropped off at 6:41. And the SUV? Gray. Midsize. Slight dent on the left. The same one he drove. The one he borrowed from our dad when his car was in the shop. The one I saw in the corner of my eye right before impact. It wasn't random. It wasn't anonymous. And it wasn't a mystery anymore. It started with the shoes. When the nurse brought me my belongings, what little I'd had on me, I noticed they were scuffed on the left side. Deep grooves. Scraped leather. A tear in the stitching that hadn't been there before. It lined up with the bruises. The way my leg had twisted when I landed. The way the bumper must have clipped me before I hit the pavement. But it wasn't just the damage. It was what wasn't there. No tire marks on the clothes. No paint residue. No glass fragments. It felt too clean. The nurse said the EMTs reported a low-impact collision at moderate speed. But I remember being thrown. I asked again for the police report. She said it hadn't come through yet. The incident was still under investigation. But the hit and run hadn't been formally logged due to lack of witness statements. Which didn't make sense. Because I'd been told there was a caller. Someone who used a payphone to report the crash. But now there was no record of the call. Only that I'd been dropped off. Signed in. By an unidentified male. And suddenly, the blank space in my memory started to feel like a doorway. A door someone had quietly closed. I asked about traffic cameras. The nurse looked uncomfortable. Said that sometimes those feeds get overwritten after 24 hours, unless someone requests preservation. I asked if anyone had. She didn't answer. So I called the city non-emergency line. Asked the same question. Was met with the same silence. Eventually, I spoke to a tech in the ER, a younger nurse who had been there the night I came in. I asked if she remembered who brought me in. She hesitated, then said, I'm not supposed to share details, but I recognize the guy. I've seen him before. Pretty sure he was your brother. I froze. Are you sure? She shrugged. Didn't see his face, but the voice sounded like him. He kept his head down. Used the name Bennett on the sign-in form. That's your last name, right? My hands went cold. Bennett. It was my last name. But it wasn't mine that night. It was his. And just like that, every blurred frame came rushing back. The engine I recognized. The voice that mumbled to the nurse. The way Brian never posted a single story between 5:30 and 7 a.m. The morning of the trip. He'd said they left for the airport by 6. But my admission form said I was dropped off at 6:41. And the SUV? Gray. Midsize. Slight dent on the left. The same one he drove. The one he borrowed from our dad when his car was in the shop. The one I saw in the corner of my eye right before impact. It wasn't random. It wasn't anonymous. And it wasn't a mystery anymore. I told the nurse I needed to see the footage. The city hadn't saved the traffic cam. Too much time had passed. But the hospital had a side camera pointed at the ambulance bay. I didn't expect much. But what I got was everything. The tech pulled it up. Grainy, low-light footage from the early morning. Timestamped 6:39 a.m. A gray SUV rolls into frame. Not fast. Not slow. Steady. The front bumper is scuffed. Left side panel has a visible dent. The car doesn't park in the designated drop-off. It pulls into the side lot. A man gets out. Tall. Hoodie up. Baseball cap low. He keeps his head down. Walks quickly to the passenger side. Out of the frame for a few seconds. Then I see it. Him lifting something. Someone. Me. My body. Slumped. Barely conscious. He carries me toward the entrance like I'm a duffel bag he's trying not to drop. He waves someone over. A nurse steps into frame. He speaks to her, low, rushed, then hands me off and walks away. He doesn't stay. Doesn't check in. Doesn't turn around. He's gone before the nurse even looks back at the entrance. I ask the tech if there's audio. He shakes his head. But I already know what he said. Because I remember it now. A whisper in my ear. Right before they wheeled me into the ER. Don't say anything yet. My brother. Brian. He hit me. And left me. And then got on a plane with our parents. And never said a word. I asked the nurse to pause the video. Zoom in. The hoodie has a logo, something local. A high school. Brian's high school. There's a scratch on his hand. A red line running up his wrist. I've seen it before. A month ago, when he backed into a post and my dad helped him buff it out. They laughed about it. I wasn't laughing now. I asked the tech if I could get a copy. He said no, HIPAA. But he left the screen unlocked when he stepped out. So I recorded it with my phone. 6 seconds. That's all I needed. Because with that clip in my hands, everything snapped into focus. The silence. The timeline. The anonymous call. The way they all vanished to Italy without looking back. It wasn't just neglect. It was cover-up. And they didn't just leave me out of their vacation. They left me in a hospital to protect him. I didn't call. I didn't scream. Didn't send a message demanding answers or begging for the kind of apology that would never come. I just texted the video. 6 seconds. No caption. No commentary. Just the clip. And waited. It didn't take long. First came Brian. What is this? Why would you send that? You're blowing this way out of proportion. Then my mom. You've been through trauma. We all have. Maybe now isn't the time to start pointing fingers. And finally my dad. What do you want from us? That was the question, wasn't it? Not what happened. Not are you okay? Not why didn't you tell us sooner? Just what do you want? Like the truth was a transaction. Like my silence had been a favor they'd grown comfortable cashing in. Brian followed up with a wall of text. I didn't mean to hit you. I didn't even realize it was you. I was running late. I panicked. You were dressed differently. I didn't know what to do. I was scared. He admitted it. Buried in excuses. Laced with I didn't know. But it was there. He hit me. And left me. Then got on a plane. With my parents. To enjoy a vacation I planned. I didn't reply. So he called. Left a voicemail. Please don't ruin everything. Mom and Dad didn't know. We didn't mean to leave you behind like that. It just spiraled. Didn't know? I checked the flight records again. Their check-in was at 7:12 a.m. My ER admittance? 6:41. That's a 31-minute window. 31 minutes to make a different decision. To stay. To turn around. To choose me. They didn't. They chose a vacation. An itinerary. An easier story. They chose not to know. Because knowing would have made it real. And real would have required consequences. I sat with all of that. With the footage. The texts. The facts. And then I blocked them. One by one. No explanation. No final message. Because they weren't confused. They weren't innocent. They were complicit. They looked at the wreckage, at me, and boarded the plane anyway. That was the apology. Their silence. And now, they could live in it. They didn't give up right away. Brian messaged me from a different number 2 days later. Said he just wanted to talk. Then my mom called Danny. Not me, Danny. My best friend. The one they never liked. The one who sat next to me every night in the hospital when they wouldn't pick up the phone. She left me a voicemail after. Your mom asked if I could convince you to come to a family meeting. Said everyone's open to repairing the relationship. I laughed. A real one. The kind that comes from disbelief, not humor. Repair? As if something cracked. This wasn't a crack. It was a crater. A hole where trust used to live. But I agreed to the meeting. Not for them. For me. Because sometimes healing means speaking the truth out loud, even if it lands on deaf ears. We met at a neutral space. A conference room my therapist helped arrange. Private. Neutral. Safe. They showed up late. Of course. My mom walked in like she was preparing for a deposition. My dad stared at the carpet like it owed him something. Brian had sunglasses on indoors. No one hugged me. No one asked how I was doing. We sat. The silence pressed against my ribs. I let them go first. My mom opened with, "We're all here because we love you, and we don't want this to become bigger than it already is." I smiled. "You think I'm making it big?" My dad jumped in. "Accidents happen. We were all under pressure." I nodded. "Okay. And when did you find out it was Brian?" They went quiet. Before or after the flight? Still nothing. Because according to hospital records, I was dropped off at 6:41. You checked in at the airport at 7:12. So that's 31 minutes. Just trying to figure out how long you sat with that decision before deciding I wasn't worth missing your cappuccino in Rome. My mom looked like she wanted to cry, but she didn't. Brian took off his sunglasses. "I didn't know it was you. You knew when you dropped me off." I panicked. "No. You prioritized." I turned to all of them. "This isn't about the accident. Not really. This is about the fact that when I needed you the most, when I was broken, you boarded a flight. You left, and you've been leaving me in different ways for years." I stood up. "So here's the part where I say it clearly, since all of you missed it the first time. I'm done. No more updates. No more invitations. No more emotional labor to bridge the distance you built." They didn't chase me. Not out of the room. Not out of the building. Not in the weeks that followed. Because when someone's used to seeing you as replaceable, they never know how to respond when you remove yourself. On purpose. I didn't post about it. No announcement. No revenge captions. No poetic paragraphs about cutting ties or reclaiming my peace. I just left. New apartment. New locks. New phone plan. No shared family account. I changed my emergency contact at the doctor's office. Took their numbers off every form. Started signing things with just my name. First and last. I'd never realized how many places they existed in my life until I started scrubbing them out. My dad's name on the backup credit line. My mom's email on my old insurance portal. Brian's Netflix profile still logged in on my TV. Little pieces of them, tucked into places I used to call mine. I erased them all. One line at a time. It felt like taking my life off airplane mode. Like waking up and realizing the room has always been bigger. I'd just been sitting in the corner, making myself small. I moved into a space with a balcony. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture was chosen with care. No inherited couches. No family hand-me-downs with silent obligations attached. I painted the walls. Bought candles that smelled like lavender instead of guilt. Hung art that didn't need to be explained. It was quiet. But for the first time in years, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I didn't tell anyone where I went. The last thing I said to them was in that conference room. And I meant it. They tried reaching out again, a few weeks later. A text from my mom. "Still hoping we can come back from this." I left it on read. Because I'd already come back. To myself. And that was the only return I needed. I used to rehearse what I'd say. If they apologized. If they showed up. If they finally saw me. I had whole speeches written in my head. Snaps I never delivered. Truths I thought I had to shout to be heard. But now, I don't need the final word. Because I already had the final walk away. One morning, weeks after I moved, I caught myself in the mirror. Really saw myself. No makeup. Hair messy. Coffee in hand. Still healing. Still figuring things out. But there was something solid in my eyes. Something settled. I didn't look like someone who had been left behind. I looked like someone who'd left on purpose. And that mattered more than any apology could have. Because I realized, It wasn't about the trip. It wasn't even about the accident. It was about the pattern. The years I spent trying to prove I was worthy of the bare minimum. The way I contorted myself to keep the peace in a family that never made space for my voice. The way I used love as a reason to stay silent. But silence didn't protect me. It made me easier to ignore. And when the moment came, when they could have chosen me, they chose themselves. Again. So I stopped choosing them. And what I found in the absence was better than any reunion. I found me. The version of me who didn't need a group photo to feel seen. Who didn't need the title of daughter or sister to know she mattered. Who didn't need a stamp in a passport to know she'd traveled far. Because healing isn't just getting up from the hospital bed. It's getting up from the belief that the people who hurt you are the only ones who can heal you. They're not. And the girl in the mirror? She already did. The first time I got on a plane again, it was quiet. No group chat countdown. No printed itineraries. No matching luggage or forced smiles at the gate. Just me. A small carry-on. A window seat. And a destination I didn't post about. It wasn't Italy. Not because I didn't still dream about it, but because I didn't want to chase something that had been poisoned. I picked somewhere softer. Somewhere warm, quiet, coastal. Where the air smelled like salt and citrus. Where I didn't have to translate who I was to be welcomed. I stayed in a small villa run by a woman named Rosa, who greeted me with a glass of wine and a story about how she turned her divorce settlement into a garden. We toasted, and I told her I was here to do something similar. I didn't sightsee aggressively, didn't try to collect photos to prove the trip was worth it. I walked, ate slowly, sat in cafes with books I'd already read just to let the pages pass again. On my final night, I wandered into a plaza at sunset. A jazz trio was playing. There were strings of lights above the tables and a wine list handwritten in smudged ink. I ordered something red, leaned back in my chair, and just breathed. No noise in my chest. No invisible weight on my shoulders. Just space. At some point, I opened my phone, scrolled through old texts I never deleted, found the one from Brian that said, "Wish you were here, broken heart," with a picture of a pasta dish I once dreamed of trying. I didn't delete it. I didn't need to, because that wasn't my story anymore. I took a photo of my own plate, ravioli in butter and sage, and saved it. Not to share, but to remember that I still got here. Not with them, not because of them, but in spite of them. They were still blocked, still unaware of where I'd gone, still pretending their story made sense without me in it. And that was fine, because healing doesn't always look like a reunion. Sometimes it looks like a full passport, a half-empty wine glass, and no urge to check your phone. Sometimes it looks like peace. And peace tastes a lot like sage and butter, and the freedom to order dessert without asking who's ready to go.
Chapter 1, A Trip Meant for Two. She always said she wanted the ocean to feel like glass. Not the kind you step over. The kind you float above, endless, silent, clean. Maya used to show me pictures on Pinterest of villas perched over teal water, champagne in hand, skin sun-kissed and glowing. "This is where I'll feel like I made it," she said once, curling into my side, showing me her phone. "Somewhere no one can bother us." So when I booked the Maldives trip, I didn't tell her right away. I waited. Waited until we were sitting across from each other at our favorite Thai place, the one with the string lights and mango sticky rice that made her cry the first time she had it. Her hair was still damp from the rain, cheeks flushed from laughing at some video I showed her on the walkover. I pulled out the folder like it was a ring box. She blinked. "What's this?" I slid it across the table. Inside, round-trip tickets, reservation confirmation, and an itinerary I spent 3 weeks building. The overwater bungalow. The private transfer. A couple's massage scheduled for the first morning. Sunset dinners. The champagne cruise she'd mentioned once, just once, 6 months ago, and never brought up again. She stared at the papers like they might disappear. Then she looked up at me, stunned. "You booked it?" "For us," I said. "As our honeymoon. I wanted it locked in. Something to hold on to while we go crazy planning this wedding." She laughed. Actually teared up. Reached across the table and grabbed my hands. "No one's ever done anything like this for me," she whispered. "Ever." I believed her. And when she kissed me across the table and said, "You're the only man I trust to get it right," I believed that too. I had no idea those words would become the biggest lie she ever told. Chapter 2, The Postponement. It started with her mother. Carla always had a way of making things sound urgent without saying anything directly. The kind of woman who'd raise an eyebrow at the color of a napkin and somehow turn it into a crisis. Maya called me one night after dinner, voice low, deliberate. "Hey babe, can we talk?" Those 4 words. Always a prelude to something wrapped in rationalization. "I've been thinking," she continued. "About the timing. About the wedding. I feel like everything's been moving really fast. We'd been engaged for 9 months. The date was set. Vendors booked. Dress fitted. My family had already bought flights." "You're getting cold feet?" I asked, trying to keep it light. No, not like that." She rushed in. "It's just. My mom's been going through a lot. And Dad's still not fully on board. He hasn't even RSVP'd. I think we should pause. Just for now. Push it a little." I didn't say anything at first. I was too busy trying to process whether this was about her family or about us. "I still want to marry you," she said, softer now. "I just want everything to feel aligned. You know?" I nodded, eventually. Told her I understood. Then we could hit pause, let things settle. "And the trip?" I asked, more cautious. "We'll go later," she said. "That place isn't going anywhere." She smiled like it was nothing. Like paradise could wait. But later that night, I logged into the travel portal to check the reservation. The dates were still locked. Nothing had been moved. I hovered over the cancel button, just for a second. But I couldn't do it. Because I didn't want to believe it yet. I didn't want to believe that Maya's cold feet had nothing to do with weather. Chapter 3, The Silence. She stopped talking about the wedding after that. No more Pinterest boards. No more dress fittings. No more unsolicited texts about color palettes or what kind of vows feel more us. It was like someone had flipped a switch and muted the part of her that had once squealed over hydrangeas and champagne flutes. She still answered texts. Still called, most days. But the tone had changed, lighter, breezier. She talked more about work. Her mother. Her new fitness coach. Everything except the thing we were supposed to be planning together. I asked if she wanted to reschedule the Maldives trip. Offered to call the resort and shift the dates. Said we could pick a new time together, make it feel fresh. She hesitated just long enough to be noticeable. "No, let's keep it as is," she said. "It gives us something to look forward to, right?" I tried to believe her. Tried to believe we were just hitting pause, not erasing the tape. But something was off. She used to send me playlists. Now I got forwarded memes. She used to ask about my mom. Now she forgot her name in conversation. And every time I mentioned the trip, our trip, her eyes would flick away. Just slightly. Like she was doing math in the background and didn't want me to see the equation. One night, I asked her point blank, "Are we okay?" She smiled. "Of course. We're just taking a breath." But it didn't feel like a breath. It felt like a silence designed to give her just enough time to do whatever she was already planning to do. And I didn't know it yet. But someone else was already packing my bags. Chapter 4, A Photo from Paradise. I wasn't looking for proof. Not that night. I was lying on my couch with a half-empty glass of bourbon and a playlist I couldn't finish. My phone buzzed, a group tag in a photo I hadn't expected. An old mutual friend had posted a throwback from college, one of those dumb remember when vacation collages. But tucked in the background of the last frame, barely noticeable, was a newer photo. Not from college. Not a throwback. It was a beach shot. A high-end resort. Maldives. And sitting on a lounge chair, partially turned toward the water, was Jared. Maya's ex. The same Jared who used to show up at her mom's parties. The same Jared she'd sworn was ancient history. The same Jared who, according to her, hadn't spoken to her in over a year. He was holding a champagne flute, shirt off, tan deep, unmistakably relaxed. Behind him, to the right of the frame, a woman. Sunglasses. Big hat. A white one-piece swimsuit with a cutout at the ribs, one I recognized. I'd seen it in Maya's drawer last month when she asked if it was too much for the honeymoon. The water behind them was glass. Exactly like she'd described it. I clicked the location tag. Same resort I had booked. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just stared at the photo for a long time. Then I pulled up the booking confirmation on my laptop. Checked the guest log through the resort's online portal. It had been updated. Same arrival date. Same villa number. Only now, there were 2 guests listed. Maya Monroe. Jared Fields. She hadn't canceled the trip. She'd just gone without me. Chapter 5, The Confirmation. I didn't call her. Didn't send a text. Didn't throw my phone across the room. I just stared at the guest log until the names stopped blurring. Then I picked up the phone and did what I always do when I need answers. I made a plan. I called the resort, pretending to be a travel assistant confirming a guest itinerary. The concierge was polite, efficient, and a little too honest. "Yes, Ms. Monroe and her companion are enjoying their stay," she said. "Would you like me to leave a message on their villa line?" "No, thank you," I said. "This is just internal. Can you confirm the return transfer is still scheduled?" She paused. "Yes, it's set for Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Viaduct Seaplane." "Perfect. Actually, can we cancel that?" There was a longer pause. "Sir? I'll rebook through my end," I said smoothly. "They'll be extended an extra day. But let's go ahead and release that transfer spot." She agreed. And just like that, the ride back was gone. I didn't know if they'd notice until the dock crew shrugged and told them it wasn't coming. But that wasn't the point. I wasn't trying to strand her. Not yet. I was just reminding myself that silence could move just as loudly as fury. She hadn't told me the truth. She'd used the trip I booked to celebrate a life we weren't going to live. So I started treating her exactly as she had treated me, like a detail to be worked around. A mistake to be corrected. A person already edited out of the picture. And I wasn't just going to take the loss quietly. I was going to give her entire family something unforgettable in return. Chapter 6, The Family Who Helped Her. Carla opened the door like nothing had happened. Still in her pearl button cardigan and wine-colored lipstick, still perfectly put together. Her smile didn't crack for a second when she saw me on her porch. "Tyler," she said, drawing the name out like honey. "We haven't seen you in forever. Come in, come in." I stepped inside. Everything smelled like cinnamon and denial. "I was in the area," I said. "Thought I'd drop by. Maya mentioned you weren't feeling well?" She waved it off. "Just stress. You know how the holidays are." I didn't say anything. Just let the silence do its work. She poured tea. Asked about my mother. Talked about how fast the neighborhood was changing. I let her ramble. Then, finally, I said, "So, how's Maya?" Carla paused. Something about her smile tightened, like she'd just remembered I wasn't supposed to know what I already knew. "She's doing some soul searching," she said carefully. "Taking time to reevaluate what she wants." "Is that what they call it now?" I said quietly. She blinked. I set my teacup down on the glass tray with a gentle clink. "I saw the photo, Carla. I know about the Maldives. About Jared. About the ticket I paid for. Her lips parted, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she gave a tired little shrug and said, "You're a good man, Tyler. But sometimes, people outgrow good." There it was. Not an apology. Not even regret. Just justification. Like betrayal was a natural part of refinement. I nodded once. "Thanks for the tea." She followed me to the door. "You deserve someone who sees you." But Maya. She needed someone who fits. I looked her in the eye. "Oh, she fits, all right." Then I walked out of that house with nothing in my hands. But more than enough to carry into my next move. Chapter 7, The Guest List Shift. 2 weeks later, an invitation arrived. Carla's 60th birthday bash. Formal. Vineyard setting. Family only plus a few close friends. Printed cardstock with gold foil and an RSVP portal that linked to a custom website. I stared at the envelope for a full minute before opening it. Inside, Maya's name was listed under Jared's. Not mine. No apology. No explanation. Just a quiet update, as if the swap had always been the plan. That was the moment I knew I wasn't going to confront her again. I was going to RSVP. And I was going to help them throw the best party of their lives. The next morning, I called Carla and told her I wanted to contribute, as a gesture of peace. "I know things didn't work out with Maya," I said, my voice warm. "But I still care about your family. I'd love to be part of the celebration." Carla was thrilled. Said it showed real maturity. She connected me with the event coordinator. Sent me the contact list. Gave me full access to the guest platform. I offered to take care of the RSVP site updates, make it more seamless for guests, track headcount, manage digital reminders. She handed it over without hesitation. "It's so nice to have someone reliable," she said. And just like that, I had the list. The email access. The infrastructure. I started by updating the RSVP flow. Then I rebuilt the guest portal from scratch. Added a hidden page. Set a timed redirect. Linked it to a private cloud folder. Monica helped me curate the receipts, the screenshots, the proof. And then I set the timer. The party would begin at 6 p.m. The slideshow. At exactly 6:45. They wanted a celebration? I was going to give them something they'd remember for the rest of their lives. Chapter 8, The RSVP That Wasn't Meant to Be. The first thing I did was make the website look perfect. Polished, elegant, Carla approved. White and gold theme? Custom RSVP form. A countdown clock to the big 6-0. All of it packaged with soft music and looping photos of vineyards and champagne glasses. Just enough sparkle to make people feel like they were part of something special. And that's what they thought it was. Just another party site. What they didn't know, what only I knew, was that I'd hidden something inside it. Not a virus. Not a public broadcast. Just a key. A key to the truth. Here's how it worked. The RSVP site had a hidden redirect. It wasn't visible to the average guest. But if someone visited the page between 6:44 and 6:46 p.m. on the night of the party, during the time Carla had planned the dinner toast, the site would automatically forward them to a private link. That link led to a video folder titled Highlights from Paradise. Inside was the slideshow. It looked like part of the celebration at first: ocean clips, drone shots of the Maldives, a romantic melody in the background. The first photos were beautiful. But then came the twist. A still frame of Maya and Jared lounging in the villa I booked. A zoom in on the resort itinerary, showing her name and his as guests. The booking receipt, with my name at the top. Followed by screenshots. Her texts to her sister saying Tyler is too nice. I need someone who sees me. A cropped photo from Instagram showing her in the white swimsuit she once asked me to help her pack. And finally, the RSVP record itself, submitted by Carla. Maya Monroe plus Jared Fields, confirmed attending as couple. The same lines that used to read Tyler Jameson plus Maya Monroe. But the final slide was the dagger. White background. Black text. This was never your seat to take. No narration. No branding. Just the truth, lined up and time-stamped. I didn't plan to show up at the party. I didn't need to. I scheduled the final guest email to go out the day before the event. It included directions, a little message from Carla, and one very specific request. Please confirm your attendance by 6:45 p.m. so we can finalize the welcome toast. And they would. Because people like Carla always follow the instructions. They'd click the link at exactly the time I told them to. In the middle of their own celebration. And that's when the screen would change. Not because I burst in uninvited. But because they walked into the reveal themselves. One click. That's all it would take. And then every guest would see what I saw. Exactly how they wanted me to see it. Beautiful. Curated. And impossible to forget. Chapter 9, The Scheduled Reveal. The party started like every other picture-perfect lie. White tents stretched across the vineyard lawn. Strings of Edison bulbs lit the sky. A jazz trio played in the corner while guests sipped wine and complimented Carla's flawless taste. There were matching cocktail napkins, a catered grazing table, and a signature drink called the Carla 60. Maya arrived with Jared. Arm in arm. Polished. Unbothered. She wore a champagne-colored dress, not far from the one she'd picked out for our rehearsal dinner. Jared looked like he didn't belong, but also didn't care. The kind of man who coasted on proximity to confidence, even if it wasn't his. They worked the crowd like they owned it. And no one stopped them. Because no one knew. Yet. At 6:45 p.m., Carla tapped her wineglass. Everyone. She called, beaming. Let's gather for a little tribute video before dinner. Just a few words from the people who matter most. The projector screen lit up behind her, perfectly timed. She turned, nodded to the AV guy, and the music queued up. Only. It wasn't the tribute she expected. The screen went dark. Then. Waves lapping. Maldives sunset. The start of the slideshow. A few people clapped, thinking it was a travel memory montage. Then came the second photo, Maya, leaning on a railing in the exact villa I booked. Jared behind her, laughing. Someone near the front tilted their head. Another whispered, "Wait. That's not Tyler." Then came the booking receipt. My name. Her name. Jared's name. Then the texts. The dates. The RSVP record. It was silent by then. Except for Carla's voice, "That's not supposed to be." She stepped forward, motioning to the AV guy. "Turn it off. That's not the right file." But it wouldn't stop. The screen held on the final frame. This was never your seat to take. Gasps. Then murmurs. Then silence again. Maya didn't speak. Jared stared at the floor. Carla turned crimson, hand fluttering at her chest like she couldn't breathe. The slideshow cut off. No one clapped. Because some gifts don't come wrapped in ribbons. Some come sealed in silence. And played in front of everyone you thought would protect you. Chapter 10, Carly doesn't look away. There was a beat of stunned silence after the screen went black. Just one long inhale from the crowd, collective, tense, like the air itself didn't know what to do next. Forks stopped moving. Champagne flutes froze midair. The jazz trio had gone quiet, instruments lowered at their sides. And then... Wow, someone whispered. No one knew who. Carla stood center stage, blinking too fast, her voice caught in her throat. That wasn't what we planned. That was not part of the schedule. Maya just stood there. Stone still. Eyes wide, but mouth clamped shut. She looked around for someone to jump in, to change the subject, to shield her with a joke. Jared shifted uncomfortably beside her, doing what men like him always do, waiting for someone else to clean up the mess. But no one did. Until Carly stood. My sister had been sitting quietly at the back of the tent, sipping her drink with all the calm of a woman who'd seen this coming months ago. She wore black, always did at family functions, like she never bought the lie of perfection. She walked to the front of the tent like she'd just been called. No mic. No platform. Just her voice. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, she started, eyes on the crowd, not on Maya. I figured this family had enough lies in rotation already. But since the screen already gave you the receipts. Her gaze landed on Carla. Then on Jared. Then, finally, on Maya. You didn't just betray my brother, she said. You used him. You humiliated him. You robbed him of something he gave you in good faith, not just a trip, not just a ring, but a future. And the worst part is, you let everyone here pretend like it didn't happen. No one interrupted. Carly's voice didn't crack. It sharpened. You all helped her do it. The guest list changed. The RSVPs were rewritten. And nobody thought he'd notice. She turned to the room. But he did. Then back to Maya. You could have left him. You could have told the truth. But instead, you turned his kindness into currency, and handed it to your ex. Maya's lips parted like she wanted to argue. But she didn't. Because she knew Carly wasn't wrong. And as my sister stepped back and raised her glass, she left them with one line. To the guest of honor, she said. Not Carla. Not Maya. But the truth. Late to the party. But right on time. Chapter 11, The Fallout Begins. No one touched their food. The roast chicken sat untouched on silver platters. The wine went warm in crystal glasses. Even the jazz trio quietly packed up and slipped away. Carla tried to recover. She clapped her hands too loudly and said, Let's get back to celebrating, shall we? But her voice cracked halfway through, and no one followed her lead. Grant, Maya's father, stood stiff at the bar, whispering furiously to the woman beside him. That was Eliza, Maya's stepmother. She looked pale, rigid, like she'd just watched the family portrait fall off the wall and shatter. Maya hadn't moved. Jared had. He was already halfway to the valet. I watched from a distance, leaning against the trellis near the outer tent. I hadn't planned to come. Had fully intended to let the video speak for itself. But curiosity has a gravitational pull. And I wanted to see the silence after the lie breaks open. Carly caught my eye across the lawn. Raised an eyebrow. I nodded once. Then Maya broke. She turned to Carla, voice sharp and too loud. Why didn't you shut it down? You said everything was locked in. Carla hissed back, Don't you dare turn this on me, you sent the files from your email, Maya. You're the one who used his reservation. Their argument was soft at first. But loud enough. I thought he'd moved on. You thought wrong. I didn't think he wasn't even supposed to be invited. From across the tent, someone muttered, Wait, he wasn't? Eliza finally stepped forward, voice low but trembling. Maybe we should just sit down. Talk privately. No, I said, walking toward the group now. Let them keep going. This is the only honest conversation they've had all year. Maya turned toward me like I was a ghost. You did this? No, I said calmly. You did. I just gave everyone the chance to see it. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Jared had vanished. No one noticed. No one cared. Because now, the party wasn't about celebration. It was about exposure. And everyone who smiled their way through betrayal had to sit with the truth. In public. For the very first time. Chapter 12, The Gifts Returned. The first package arrived 2 days after the party. No return address. Just my name, typed and centered in small black letters. Inside was a bottle of 18-year scotch, the one I brought to Carla's last Christmas, unopened. A folded note rested on top. You left this behind. Thought you might want it now. Grant. No apology. No explanation. Just an unspoken attempt to make the world feel even again. It didn't. The second came the next morning. A monogrammed robe with my initials, still in the gift box. Maya and I had picked out matching ones for the honeymoon suite, hers had never made it out of the tissue paper. Then came the album. Wrapped in soft leather. Embossed with gold lettering, Tyler and Maya, Forever Begins. Inside, photos from our engagement shoot. Beach shots. Laughter frozen in sunlit frames. Sticky notes on some pages where Maya had planned out future captions. Our first sunset as husband and wife. He makes me feel seen. I almost didn't open it. But I did. On the final page, taped loosely at the corner, was a small envelope. Inside, a photo I didn't remember taking. Me, holding the resort reservation confirmation, grinning like an idiot. Maya had taken it. Said she wanted to remember how happy I looked when I surprised her. I sat with that photo for a long time. Then I picked up a pen. Crossed out her caption. Wrote a new one underneath. The last time I mistook a performance for love. I closed the album. Slid it back into the box. But I kept the photo. Tucked it into my desk drawer, next to the passport I almost didn't use. Because the next flight to the Maldives would be a one-way trip, just for me. And this time, the only name on the reservation would be mine. Chapter 13, Jared gets an invoice. It wasn't petty. It was surgical. 3 weeks after the party, I sent Jared an envelope. Flat. Clean. Professional. Inside, an itemized invoice. Summary. Unauthorized use of prepaid travel package. Guest name, Jared Fields. Original reservation owner, Tyler Jameson. Total value, $14,612.92. Each line was documented: flights, transfers, spa credits, the villa upgrade Maya begged for. All of it laid out with time-stamped receipts and confirmation numbers. But it wasn't just a list. At the bottom, in bold. Payment due in full within 30 days. Failure to respond will result in escalation. No emotional flourish. No handwritten note. Just the facts. Because it wasn't a prank. It was a bill. And legally? A damn good one. I sent a copy to his office, the architecture firm listed on his LinkedIn. Address verified. Signature required on delivery. I didn't expect a check. But I wanted him to feel it. To see his name printed next to every dollar he didn't deserve. To know he'd been formally, publicly, and professionally billed for the lie he helped orchestrate. I didn't hear back. But a week later, the invoice went viral. Someone posted it online, maybe someone in his office. Reddit picked it up. TikTok followed. Suddenly people were reenacting it, praising the formatting, dissecting the legality. Even a financial podcast DM'd me. I didn't reply. Yet. Because this wasn't for clicks. It was closure. Then I got a message from someone unexpected. You don't know me. I dated Jared years ago. Just wanted to say, I wish I'd done what you did. That's when I knew. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's formal. Logged. And sent with postage. Chapter 14, The interview request. I didn't expect it to turn into a movement. At first, it was just a Reddit post. A few comments. Then a share to TikTok. Then the screenshots. Then the memes. The invoice I sent Jared, part revenge, part legal curiosity, started bouncing through the internet like a cautionary tale dressed up as catharsis. People weren't laughing at me. They were rooting for me. A week after the post went viral, my inbox changed. Strangers messaged me with their stories, quiet, sad, sometimes brutal. Men who'd been left at the altar. Women who'd planned honeymoons their partners never showed up for. People who got cheated on by entire families pretending nothing happened. Then came the podcast request. We'd love to have you on for a long-form feature. We'll change names. Keep it respectful. But people need to hear this story from you. I let the email sit for 3 days. I wasn't chasing attention. This was never about an audience. The invoice wasn't a stunt. It was an answer. But there was something about being invited to speak, really speak, that felt clarifying. Because the truth is, I had stayed quiet for a long time. I'd kept my voice level when they erased me from the RSVP. I smiled at Carla when she lied to my face. I let Maya walk into the Maldives with another man and said nothing, not to her, not to him. But this was my story. And I was done letting people rewrite it for me. The studio was dim and warm. The host, Andrea, offered me tea and sat across from me like we were old friends. She didn't rush. She let me tell the story the way it actually happened, not the version the internet had started to embellish. Not the dramatized version for clicks. Just me. Just the truth. When we got to the invoice, she smiled. That was my favorite part. I grinned. It wasn't about the money. What was it about? Boundaries, I said. Proof that I didn't let them take everything. That I closed the tab myself. She nodded. Then came her final question. Soft. Almost too gentle. If you could go back. To the night you booked the trip. When everything still felt right. What would you tell that version of yourself? I didn't answer right away. I thought about the smile on Maya's face when I showed her the folder. The way she'd said no one had ever done something like that for her. And then I thought about how easy it is to mistake flattery for affection. Gratitude for love. Proximity for loyalty. I cleared my throat. I'd tell him this. Don't be afraid to give someone everything. But watch who claps for you. When they're not getting anything in return. Andrea held my gaze. That's beautiful, she whispered. That's gonna stay with people. And for the first time in months. I didn't feel like I'd lost something. I felt like I'd reclaimed it. Epilogue, something to remember. The plane touched down just after sunrise. Clear skies. Turquoise water stretching past the horizon like glass. The kind of view you don't forget, even if you try. A young staff member greeted me on the dock with a chilled towel and a smile. Welcome back, Mr. Jameson. I nodded. Good to be here. He didn't know the story. None of them did. As far as the resort was concerned, I was just another solo traveler checking into a honeymoon suite with no +1. The same villa. Same deck. Same ocean. Only this time, there was no second toothbrush on the counter. No second glass beside the champagne bucket. No secrets buried beneath the surface. Just me. And peace. On the third night, I stood out on the deck alone, the water glowing beneath the glass floor panels, fish drifting through beams of soft light. I reached into my duffel and pulled out the small wooden box I'd carried here. Inside, the photo. Me, holding the original booking confirmation, smiling. The last moment before everything unraveled. I took it out. Smoothed the corners. Then folded it once, not to destroy it, just to make it smaller. Manageable. I didn't throw it away. I just put it back inside the box, closed the lid, and tucked it at the back of the closet. A relic? Not a scar. Later that week, the concierge asked if I wanted to book any excursions. I said no. I'm not here to chase anything, I told her. I'm just here to be. She smiled and handed me a shell, polished, white, and weightless. Take this, she said. Something to remember. I did. And as the waves curled quietly beneath the deck and the wind moved through the curtains behind me, I realized she had no idea just how perfect that line was. Because the trip they took from me? I took it back. Every second of it. And this time, I made it unforgettable.
Don't just take back your trip, take back your story. For more vacation betrayals that ended in poetic payback, hit subscribe. Savage Endings is your passport to karma.